Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here. Don't forget to subscribe. But in Amazon news, and that's what we're talking about today, Amazon is being sued by Washington, D.C. for excluding neighborhoods from its Prime Speedy delivery option. So I think this is an interesting one, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure who's in the right here. Now, CNBC had a really good write-up on this, and here's what's going on. Because Washington, D.C.'s Attorney General Brian Schwab sued Amazon about a week ago or so, accusing them of covertly depriving residents in certain zip codes, essentially in Washington, D.C., from access to Prime's high-speed delivery. Now, the lawsuit alleges that since 2022, Amazon has quote-unquote secretly excluded two historically underserved DC zip codes, essentially from its expedited delivery service, while charging Prime members living there with the full subscription price. Now, Amazon's membership costs $139 a year, and it includes perks like 2-day shipping, access to streaming content, etc., etc. Now, according to AG Schwab in a statement, and I quote, Amazon is charging tens of thousands of hardworking Ward 7 and 8 residents for an expedited delivery service it promises but does not provide. While Amazon has every right to make operational changes, it cannot covertly decide that $1 in one zip code is worth less than another. Meaning one area code or one zip code in this case basically is worth less than another zip code. And quite frankly, I think they can do that. Now, we'll get to that, and let's talk about this, because Amazon spokesperson Kelly Nantel said in a statement that it's quote-unquote categorically false that its business practices are, quote, discriminatory or deceptive. And to quote Nantel, we want to be able to deliver as fast as we possibly can to every zip code across the country. However, at the same time, we must put the safety of our delivery drivers first. In the zip codes in question, there have been specific and targeted acts against drivers delivering Amazon packages. We made the deliberate choice to adjust our operations, including delivery routes and times, for the sole reason of protecting the safety of drivers, end quote. Now, Nantel also said that Amazon had offered to work with the Attorney General's office on efforts to, quote, reduce crime and improve safety in these areas, end quote. So, let's look at some of the facts or alleged facts on the ground as being reported by CNBC. Now, in June of 2022, Amazon allegedly stopped using its own delivery trucks to shuttle packages into these zip codes. These zip codes are specifically 20019 and 20020. I do not know DC in that manner, so if you're from DC, I'm sure you know those zip codes. But anyway, again, they did this based on concerns over driver safety, according to the suit. So the zip code span neighborhoods in the southeast and northeast of the District of Columbia. Now, in place of its in-house delivery network, Amazon instead relied on outside carriers like UPS and the U.S. Postal Service to make these deliveries, according to the complaint that was filed in D.C. Superior Court. Now, that decision caused residents in those areas, which for the record are the second and fourth most popular zip codes in the entire city, or District of Columbia, I should say, to experience, quote, significantly longer delivery times than their neighbors in other district zip codes, despite paying for the exact same membership price for Prime. That's according to the lawsuit. Now, data from the Attorney General shows that before Amazon instituted that change, more than 72% of Prime packages in the two zip codes were delivered within 2 days of checkout. That number dropped to as low as 24% following that move, while conversely, 2-day delivery rates shot up to 74%. In other words, because they made this change, Amazon wasn't delivering as fast in these zip codes, and so by virtue of that, only a quarter of the packages were getting there with speedy delivery, whereas 3/4 were not. That is a direct flip of what was happening prior to that change. Now, Amazon, for the record, has also faced prior complaints of disparities in its Prime program. In 2016, basically, Amazon said they would expand access to same-day delivery in cities including Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, Washington, and that was after a Bloomberg investigation found that specifically Black residents were, quote, about half as likely, end quote, to be eligible for same-day delivery as white residents, meaning those neighborhoods essentially were being excluded from that delivery zone, even though those neighborhoods were paying the same price as other neighborhoods that were getting that service. So the zip codes in Schwab's complaint, that's the Attorney General again, in the areas with large black populations is essentially what we're talking about here. And according to a 2022 census data based on its American Community Survey, that rings true in the sense that those have heavier black populations per that survey. Now, according to Schwab's complaint, Amazon also never communicated the delivery exclusion to its Prime members in the area. So, when consumers in the affected zip code complained to Amazon about slower delivery speeds, obviously compared to, let's say, a neighboring zip code, the company said it was due to circumstances outside of its control. And to be perfectly honest, if they are claiming that this is a crime issue, meaning the drivers were targeted for, let's say, either attack or robbery, because obviously if you're driving an Amazon truck, you got goods in there, then that's essentially what they are saying. So basically, if our drivers are getting hit in this zip code and they're not getting hit in other zip codes, we don't want to send our drivers there for safety concerns. But here's the thing. I'm not sure necessarily if this lawsuit by the Attorney General is going to fly. So I went and looked at the terms of services or terms and conditions of Amazon Prime that essentially you agree to by signing up for Prime for $139 a year. And one of the things that they said, and I quote directly, Prime shipping benefits depends upon inventory availability, order deadlines, and in some cases, the shipping address. End quote. And so I don't, for the record, know if that was in the terms and conditions back in 2022 when they made this change, but the point is it's there now. And so by virtue of that, whether you're in a slow area or a fast area, you're simply agreeing that, hey, this is one benefit of many from Prime that you're going to get. You get discounts, you get streaming, you get fast delivery, et cetera, but you're not necessarily guaranteed fast delivery per their terms and conditions. I continue with another section and I quote again the terms and conditions. Some Prime benefits may require certain purchase thresholds, have quantity or shipping address limitations, or require members to meet specified criteria in order to access them. Once again, they are mentioning shipping address as as having a standard for criteria for delivery. In the same way that if you're, let's say, living in absolute ruralness, you're 2 hours from any town, you can't necessarily expect Prime to be there in 2 hours, right? When the town may itself be on 2 days because it's so far out in the boonies that Prime's not going to put infrastructure there. I also quote them once again from their terms and conditions. Amazon, quote, from time to time, Amazon may choose in its sole discretion to add or remove Prime membership benefits, end quote. Essentially meaning, as you're signing up for this, you may have speedy delivery, but that can change. And that is, again, in the terms and conditions that a person agrees to when they sign up. I, again, do not know if they were there in 2022, but they are there as of right now, December 2024. But here's the thing. I don't necessarily think this is like an issue of racism or anything along those lines. I also didn't get the sense from the CNBC article that they were really talking about that, even though they're talking about predominantly black neighborhoods versus white neighborhoods, et cetera, et cetera. If I look at any corporate structure, basically that is profitable, like with a retail service, take Starbucks, for example, Whole Foods, Amazon, et cetera, they are going to put the infrastructure where, one, they have a population that essentially can ensure growth of the brand, but two, they're going to target audiences that they think will either, one, spend the money, or two, buy the product. Right. And so by virtue of that, you see Starbucks in only select locations. You can see Starbucks in the suburbs. So there's a lot of areas in Chicago, that don't have them. Gary, Indiana has no basically Starbucks whatsoever. It's considered a high crime neighborhood. And that's not necessarily, again, a race thing. And so I'm not necessarily sure what this is. I'm not discounting that, for the record, as a potential issue here. My point is that I don't know. And if Amazon is looking at this and they're saying, look, we have essentially 100 people in one area and 100 people in another area, and our drivers could potentially basically have crime committed against them, a robbery, an attack, whatever it is, to go into one of these neighborhoods, which therefore drives up the cost of Amazon. Their insurance premiums go up. There could be actual danger to an individual that is delivering for them. These are issues that would be taken into account and in consideration. When basically I was coming up 20 plus years ago, in a company, they essentially would say there are certain neighborhoods in the Chicagoland area that we simply will not do business in. Now, nobody in those neighborhoods was paying for the service that wasn't being delivered, so it's a different standard. But when you're living in an urban area, areas that, quite frankly, are more dangerous than others. We basically here in the Chicagoland area have a really good sushi place, and it's a Japanese guy that owns it, and basically a taco place as well that he owns. And a couple of years ago, he was actually shot in a bad neighborhood coming back from that. Just total random violence, just struck in his car. And so by virtue of that, here we are. And so I'm not, again, adjudicating this one way or the other, but what I'm saying is I think this comes down to dollars and cents. And why I don't necessarily think that this is going to fly as a lawsuit is specifically for the terms and conditions I mentioned from Prime. Prime is not guaranteeing you 2 days. It's a luxury to have that. We can get Prime stuff same day, if you order in certain times, et cetera, because there's Amazon fulfillment warehouses in our area, but there's no guarantee, right? The other side of it too is that, do we really need 2-day delivery or even 2-hour delivery in some cases in some select areas? Are we that much of a consumer that we can't wait? I guess not. And I think that's part of the issue too. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Thanks, everybody.